Welcome back to another episode of the Mini Hoops Podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the Western Eastern Conference Finals games. We'll also be talking about Ben Simmons and the recent coaching hires. So do you guys want to start by going into Clippers-Suns Game 3?
Yeah, all right. So obviously there's no Kawhi in the series. He has been listed doubtful for Game 5 already. This is as of we're recording Sunday. So Paul George, Reggie Jackson have had to step up, among others. Paul George he's been both good and good and criticized. DeAndre Ayton is probably the biggest takeaway for me from this series. He's really stepped into the spotlight, although he's not really in the spotlight at the same time because it's Booker and it's Chris Paul and it's Paul George in this whole series. But Ayton's kind of become just a walking double-double. I mean, last night he had he had a double-double and 4 blocks. He had 20 rebounds and 18 points or something like that.
It was like an almost 20-20 game or something. It was like 19, I think, and 20-something rebounds.
Right.
19 and 22 is what Ayton finished off in 41 minutes last night with those 4 blocks.
That's right. He played
dominant.
He had about the team high in minutes, didn't he? 41. I don't think anybody else played that, which is surprising from a center. But or I guess Booker fouled out, so maybe he would have led the team, but whatever. But either way, yeah, for me, DeAndre Ayton is definitely the biggest thing that stands out to me. He's really kind of solidified his number 1 overall draft position. So yeah, that stood out to me for sure.
Yeah, he's also been really efficient too for the Suns. As with Chris Paul and Booker kind of been struggling shooting, especially in Game 3. They did not shoot very well, but Ayton he's been very efficient scoring, which has helped them stay in these games and pull away from the Clippers in the series.
He's kind of just that paint scoring beast. Doesn't really take many jumpers or anything. He obviously doesn't shoot threes. I think he's attempted 2 or 3 throughout the whole playoffs this year. So by no means a perimeter threat, but just kind of dominates the paint.
Yeah, I definitely feel like Ayton, if he could work it on the offseason, he definitely could extend his range. Because he's not a bad shooter from the mid-range, too. But overall, just with Game 4 last night, it was just atrocious for both teams to watch, honestly. Both teams shot so poorly throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, it was rough to watch that fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm. Only real bright spot for the Suns was how dominant DeAndre Ayton was. And then you have Booker fouling out and then shooting 8 for 22, 0 for 5 for 3. And then Chris Paul was missing one of those casual, his normal mid-range pull-ups, that kind of step back that he always makes. He's missing a bunch of those down the stretch. But yeah, it was just a big, rough offensively game in the whole second half of that.
Yeah, it was definitely a very offensively challenged game in the last night in that fourth quarter.
Mid-80s, what was it, 84 to 81 or something like that?
Yeah, someone super low scoring like that.
84 to 80 was the final.
Jesus.
Yeah.
15 points scored for the Suns in the fourth and 14 for the Clippers.
Wow.
So now that the Suns are up 3-1, you guys think it's over? And if so, how many more games is it going to take? Suns going to close it out tomorrow?
Personally, I think that Suns going back home court advantage. I got Suns in 5. Sorry, Stein.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I want to root for the Clippers, I still want to see Rondo get another championship here. 3-1 is not a easy comeback to make. So, I mean, Suns will probably win either the next game or Game 6. But I'll be rooting for the Clippers to win 3 in a row.
Just got to keep that on the record there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's over for the most part. I think another bad Devin Booker game and another bad Chris Paul game are very unlikely. Although Chris Paul was joking about being down 3-1 in his post-game interview. So, who knows, maybe he could choke. But, yeah, I think, like you said, Mason, I think the Suns are going to go home, and I think they'll probably close it out. Game 5, don't want to extend it anymore. But who knows?
I think it all relies on basically how Book and Chris Paul do. If they do shoot bad, the Clippers do have some surprising spots with how good Reggie Jackson has been playing as of late. Maybe if Paul George doesn't shoot 5 for 20, they could win the game or miss 2 free throws.
Hey,
But
man.
I don't know. It's all. I think it all based on how either if Book or Chris Paul can kind of carry the way, and then you obviously have Ayton playing insane already too. If he's locking down the paint, I think that this Suns team is gonna win the next game and on to the finals they go.
Right. Yeah, I think it's they just have to be average, right? They just have to be like themselves. They just have to be decently efficient. They just can't be. And Booker's been in foul trouble the last 2 games, right? Didn't he foul out of both of them? Or he had like 5 maybe in the previous game.
I know him and Paul George have been butting heads too. They both had techs yesterday too, so that's another thing that could affect the whole series if they are still going at it. And let's say one of them gets kicked out of the game, that could also just mess everything up for either team.
Yeah, swing the momentum.
I think Monty Williams is probably talking to the team about that composure, keeping their heads clear. Let's pivot to the East. Series is currently 1-1 after the Bucks blew out the Hawks in Game 2. It's not really a whole lot to get into here. But is there anything that stands out? Anything that you guys want to touch on from Game 2?
I was gonna say the Bucks look really good after that last game. They kind of needed to win that and make a statement win because after losing Game 1, but I don't know. The Hawks are definitely gonna have to figure something out when they go back to Atlanta for the next couple games.
Yeah, pivoting back to Game 1, how this Hawks team they're surprised. They can win against these big teams like the Bucks. They've surprised me this whole playoffs. But overall, with Game 2, how it was such a blowout. Trey did not play well. There's only 15 points. If the Hawks want to win this series, Trey's got to shoot efficiently and step it up to the max, dropping 40 a game if they want to win this thing, in my opinion. But overall, I think Bucks kind of are going to be carrying momentum from yesterday or from Game 2, and I think that the Bucks personally are going to win in 5.
I rewatched the first half of Game 2 yesterday, and the first half was basically the only significant part of the game.
Yeah, that was
the Hawks did a really bad job defensively on Giannis, I think. They let him get a lot of one-on-ones, which obviously is never going to end well with just about any player on the Hawks, or I guess you could say any team in the league almost with Giannis.
It's never good with Giannis.
Right. And the Hawks had so many turnovers in the first half. It seemed like every other possession they were turning it over. The Bucks role players are incredible. I think Pat Connaughton is super, super solid. Bryn Forbes is a sniper, and he has no hesitation when he shoots. He comes screaming off of those off-ball screens and just fires away as soon as he hits the ball.
Don't forget Bobby Portis, how good of a shooter he's become this year.
He's been unreal. Just an energy man too, hustler. And the Bucks went on a 20-0 run in the second quarter, and that was really when it all fell apart. There's really no looking back from there. I think, I don't know. I want to say the Bucks in about 5 or 6, but any game that Trey goes for about 40, which does not seem super unlikely, I think the Hawks have a shot. So I don't know. I think as of right now, I'd probably say Bucks in 6, but I've doubted the Hawks so much so far in the playoffs this year that I'm kind of hesitant to do it again. But yeah, I just think the Bucks are the better team through and through.
Yeah, same. I think Bucks should win in like 5 or 6 games, but I'm the same where I did not expect the Hawks to even make it here. So they definitely could surprise some people, but who knows?
Yeah, like I was talking about earlier, how the Hawks have already surprised me from beating the Sixers and now taking game 1 from the Bucks. Gabe, you kind of also touched on my point where Trey's really going to have to step up and drop like 40 a game if the Hawks want to stay in the series. It's like it still could happen. Like, it is likely possibility because he can score. They are going back to Atlanta tonight as we're recording this. And who knows? They've been such a surprise. What if they could? Honestly, the series could go to 7, but personally, I think it's going to end in 5.
Yeah, we'll see. Tonight's going to be a big one for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Simmons. So Ben Simmons news, it seems like every hour we're getting more information on Ben Simmons. But as we record it, I took a look at this Bleacher Report article from Tyler Conway that says that Philly is still reluctant, quote, reluctant to trade Simmons. Rich Paul, Ben Simmons' agent, met with Daryl Morey and the Philly GM Elton Brand to discuss the future of the organization with Simmons. There was no formal trade request made or no trade request at all, but they did explore whether a deal, quote, makes sense. And according to Woj, Simmons' trade value is still significant, which doesn't really give us a whole lot. I feel like that's not super helpful.
It's not really surprising. He's
Right.
still a really good player.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And yeah, so we heard a little something that said it would take, I think Dane Moore said it would be 2 first-round picks. Some Eastern Conference executive said for the Timberwolves, if it doesn't include Cat or Ant, that it's going to take at least 2 firsts to get into the conversation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, the trades that we talked up in the past usually included at least 2 firsts. I think a 3-team deal, like we discussed, the Bradley Beal one, where it's Beal and Beasley to Philly, and a bunch of other stuff, bad contracts, young talent, and picks to Washington, and then Simmons to Minnesota. 2 picks would be, they'd get Beal and they'd get Beasley, so they wouldn't really need picks there.
Mm-mm.
So they'd be getting something from Washington, obviously. But yeah, like I said, there's always news coming out on Simmons. Have you guys heard anything significant of recent?
I have not, but I've seen a bunch of people online saying how intriguing the fit with Simmons and Cat would be, and I also think how crazy it'd be as it kind of just let Cat more space the floor out, and then we have that good perimeter defender also that can also block shots and just help Cat not having to, or because Cat really struggles on the pick and roll. He doesn't really know when to step up or to drop. And if you have Simmons there, you won't really need any help there because he would kind of just. I feel like he'd just fit in perfectly and be able to stop that situation from even happening. Because he prevents the drive and with his long arms can steal it or even just tip the balls off to one of our other players.
Definitely. That drop coverage with Cat has kind of plagued the Wolves for years, with dudes not being able to fight through screens and stuff like that. So Cat has just been in that position trying to decide, do I almost switch and guard the ball handler, or do I drop to cover the lob? It's a really tough position to put him in just repeatedly year after year. So yeah, like you said,
He's
It'd be
definitely
nice if we could have
struggled.
Simmons get through those screens and then, take some pressure off of Cat.
Yeah, to go back to your question, I really haven't heard any new stuff besides the stuff you already talked about with Simmons. But I like all these people have been saying no formal trade request made. They're not going to make this stuff public. Like they're not going to say if they want to keep him or not. It's just internally. I personally think they're going to move on, and other people think they're going to move on. I'd like to guys hear your opinion on it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, the Sixers have been a disappointment kind of in the East the last couple of years, so I can see why everyone's kind of trying to get them to move on. I don't really know if it's gonna be like their best move unless they really find a great trade that they can get another star like Simmons like back immediately. So kind of like either that Bradley Beal or maybe Dame or something. But I just don't really see that happening because I don't know if these teams are going to want to blow up their rosters to try and get Simmons.
Yeah, I agree. Like Dane Moore also said that he talked to some executive that said that, it might not take 2 firsts and some other talent or whatever because he said that Simmons' contract is not cheap. So it's really hard to pin down his value, which is, we talked about that in the last episode, so we won't dive into that again. But yeah, I agree that I don't know if teams are going to be wanting to give up big assets for Simmons right now. I think kind of switching to what Philly needs or what Philly could do this offseason. Kyle Lowry, of course, we've heard the rumors of Lowry to Philly forever. I think that'd be a really good fit. He's like 35 years old, and
he's from Philly,
right? And he'd be that perimeter creation that they desperately need, especially if they don't have Simmons. They're going to need perimeter creation. So I think if I'm Philly, if I'm Elton Brand and Daryl Morey, I'm definitely trying to get Kyle Lowry because I don't see him going back to Toronto. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. They're like kind of rebuilding. They're definitely not going to be any good. So
they want to get young. I could also see where if Philly does somehow sign Lowry, they could do the sign and trade 3-team trade. Maybe you send Rubio and a bunch of picks and some other cap fillers to the Raptors and then you still get Simmons to the Wolves, and then you get Lowry to Philly.
Yeah, I think
I won't dive into all of it, but yeah.
I think as long as we're talking Toronto, I just want to bring up Chris Boucher. I've been a fan of Chris Boucher since last offseason. He was a free agent, and I was hoping to see the Wolves sign him. It didn't obviously work out, but I doubt it would happen. But it would be cool and it would be exciting to see him come over to Minnesota in a potential trade with Toronto. But like I said, he had a pretty good year this year, and so I kind of doubt that it would happen. But I do like Chris Boucher a lot.
Yeah. It really all matters. So yeah, if they lose Lowry, what are they gonna do with like the 4th pick in the draft? Are they gonna move on from other players to get younger? We still really don't know. The East is so questionable. Where Toronto could still even make a jump next year to get back into the playoff hunt.
Right.
Yeah.
I think they were struck with injuries with Siakam being hurt, and then was Lowry hurt too?
Yeah, I think he missed some time.
Yeah, and it's just stuff like that. They have Boucher really stepped up this year with Siakam being out, and same with Van Vliet also had a pretty good year as well. So
Right.
I'm just kind of curious how they're going to approach things this offseason and into next season.
For sure. So a lot of coaching hires have gone down since we recorded our last episode. Rick Carlisle was hired by the Pacers. Oh boy, how do I pronounce this? Ime Okuda was hired by the Celtics. Hopefully that's right. And then Jason Kidd hired by the Mavs. And as of, I believe, this morning, Chauncey Billups was hired in Portland for the Trailblazers. Thoughts here?
Personally, with the Pacers hire, I think they got a great hire. They kind of just, I was noticing back, they re-signed kind of Rick Carlisle because he coached there from 2003 to 2007. But Rick Carlisle is still a great coach. He's only missed the playoffs 5 times in his 20 years coaching.
Incredible.
I know, and he's had good power forwards with Dirk or good like power forward center with Dirk, and I'm just kind of happy to see what he does with Sabonis.
I was going to say the exact same thing. That's super interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Definitely should be good thing to look forward to next season for them. I think Billups in Portland is going to be an interesting fit here. Like, I think Portland probably has, as the moment, the best roster out of these 4 teams. I don't know, maybe the Celtics, you want to compete with that, but like, I want to see how Dame reacts to this because I saw on Twitter there might be some questions on the hire from him, but I don't know. Well, I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely interested to see how that works too. Because if Dame does get traded, you'd think that the Blazers would probably blow it up and then trade CJ and others.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
That'd be quite the quite the turn for Billups if he got hired thinking he was going to coach Dame and CJ and other guys, and then he had some horrible roster because they decided to rebuild. But yeah, I'm definitely interested to see that. And then the Celtics hire definitely intrigues me, just because they've got a lot going on. Obviously, trading Kemba and Tatum kind of emerging as a superstar. Jaylen Brown coming back healthy after he missed some time at the end of last year. People are expecting big things out of Boston. And I'm just interested to see how this hire works. Brad Stevens now in the front office. Kind of wild that one of his first moves super soon after he got in front office was trading Kemba. So yeah, I'm interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, I'm also really interested in that too because Udoka has been just under the kind of apprenticeship. I say it right, and he's kind of been an apprentice to Greg Popovich while he was an assistant coach from 2012 to 2019, and when they won the ship in 2014. But I think that that's really going to also help the Celtics this year. Just having the coach that has been under a really good coach before. I really don't know too much about him, but he does have a good roster. Another head coaching hire that kind of surprises me is with the Mavs hiring Jason Kidd. Yes, they're bringing him back to the team that he was on before, but I don't know. He's not really been a good coach, in my opinion. He's had a negative win-loss record throughout so far in his coaching career. He got fired by Milwaukee in 2017-18, and then I did see that he signed JJ Barea to be one of his assistant coaches. So that's kind of funny.
Yeah, that is kind of funny.
He was technically on the roster last year, right? Even though he was retired. Cuban wanted to give him like a 1-year deal to just, be nice to him, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about best fit or, most significant hire. Who do you think is in the worst spot? I think for me, it's Jason Kidd. They have a disaster of a cap situation. There's been rumblings of Luka maybe not being super, super happy there. Kristaps Porzingis' contract is disastrous. They have a bunch of potential free agents, Tim Hardaway and others. So I think that's my situation on the Jason Kidd hire. Kind of indifferent when it comes to Kidd as a coach. Like you said, doesn't have a great record, so I don't love him as a coach. But I just think that situation is going to be really hard to manage for both Kidd and Cuban and everyone in the new executive too they just hired. who was what was he, a Nike executive for years or something like that?
Yeah.
It's an interesting jump
It's
to the
it's just
league.
it's not going to help Kid with like obviously having the rumbles with Luca coming or Luca maybe wanting out in the future, and then the fact where if it's more on the GM side here where I don't know Kristaps is on the atrocious deal. Maybe they have to flip him or something to make their cap larger so they can re-sign like a Tim Hardaway and get some assets for that. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah. I mean, Kristaps obviously took a big step down last season with his performance, and even in the playoffs, he looked absolutely terrible. But and he's on that bad contract, so I feel like the Mavs have to kind of do something to get Luca to take the next step or whatever, or the team to take a next step. So I feel like you might have to try and get rid of Porzingis. Um, and I'm not excited about the Jason Kidd hire to maybe try and take that next step, but I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's super sticky situation. Um, I don't I don't see a whole lot of teams in the West falling off, which is kind of the worst thing for the Mavs. You know, Lakers, Clippers maybe you won't be there if Kawhi decides to leave, but you know, they're up and coming teams and I don't see a lot of teams falling off. So it's going to be really hard for the Mavs to get better this offseason or the next and really improve their standing in the West. Just purely because of competition. Um, I think the first move is definitely to try and get rid of that Kristaps Porzingis contract. I don't know how the hell they do that. Um,
We're gonna have to throw picks on there, man.
yeah, a lot of
Do we
them.
even have any picks? Yeah,
I think they still are giving away picks from the Porzingis deal with New York,
I still gave him to New York. Yeah.
Oof, that's
but
even worse.
they might just it's it might end up being kind of a Russell Westbrook, John Wall type swap. Um,
Oh yeah.
just trading one really, really bad contract for another because although I don't know, it's not I guess that's not super applicable because Porzingis is a lot younger than John Wall and Westbrook when that trade happened, but so maybe someone takes a gamble on his potential. But yeah, I don't know, that contract situation's a disaster. And they don't have any young talent either. It's like Jalen
Yeah.
Brunson is basically it.
Luca. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So
Luca's the entire team.
right. So I don't know what you
Real.
can do there.
Going on the last part, just after talking about the coaches, who, in your guys' opinion, do you think is going to perform the best?
I think it's kind of a toss up between Rick Carlisle and Udoka, who I previously pronounced Okuda, which is not the NFL cornerback. Um, because they both had kind of disappointing seasons, the Celtics and Pacers. They finished lower in the Eastern Conference than they probably should have, although they both dealt with injuries. Um, I just think Rick Carlisle is going to work really well with that roster, especially Sabonis, as we talked about earlier. Karis LeVert's going to have some time to kind of get his feet under him in Indy, and I think he's going to have a big impact. Um, and the Celtics obviously switched up their roster a little bit. Horford is back. Kemba is out. Um, but yeah, I expect big things out of the Pacers this year. I expect them to make the playoffs for sure. So yeah,
So I'm kind of with Gabe here on the whole. Well, I guess with Carlisle, he's going to really help out Sabonis, I think, because of how good he coached Dirk back in the day. And then with Udoka, I think coming from the Pop regime as he coached there for 7 years as assistant under Pop, I think that could also be a big impact for the Celtics. Plus, like you said, how they've moved on from some players and added new players to the roster and some familiar faces as well. But I overall think that both of those teams, the Celtics and the Pacers, will have the biggest impact from a coaching standpoint compared to the Mavericks or the Trailblazers because how tough the West is.
All right. And which coach do you guys think will have the toughest time in this upcoming season?
I think it's probably going to be Jason Kidd. I just don't really believe in him as a really good coach in the league. So, and the whole situation with Porzingis is kind of weird. So I think he'll probably struggle the most in his first year.
I'm also pretty much going to agree with Sign with Jason Kidd, just based on his past coaching experiences with the Bucks and the Nets. Um, just overall, I think that Dallas situation's kind of a struggle right now with the whole question mark on does Luka want to play there anymore, and with the whole Porzingis thing, and then as the rub back to the whole cap situation problem that they're having. But I think that Jason Kidd was going to have the biggest struggle coming into this year. But also, I feel like with the Chauncey Billups signing in Portland, he's never had a head coaching opportunity yet. He's only been the assistant coach for the Clippers. I believe it was this year. And I'm just honestly curious if how Dame is happy with it. It's really going to affect their future personally. What do you think, Gabe?
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you guys. I think Jason Kidd is definitely going to have the toughest time, um, having to manage Luca and all the egos there. You guys talked about the cap situation is pretty terrible. As we talked about earlier too, they don't really have any young talent to work with other than Brunson and Luca. I guess you could consider Porzingis in there, but he's in a problematic situation. Um, and yeah, I think the Trailblazer situation can get really difficult as well, or it might get very difficult. Whether that's CJ being traded to Philly or Dame asking out and then being traded. So I think it can go south really fast there in Portland. But I think as of this moment, it's probably worse in Dallas.
Well, those are some really good takes, boys. We'll see you next week.